So next question is from geography. Is how do the melting of Arctic ice and glaciers of the Antarctic differently affect weather patterns and human activities? So this is, in my opinion, a difficult question because we don't study directly about the effects of Arctic or Antarctic directly. And we just read through it, but differently कि Arctic का impact क्या है, Antarctic का impact क्या है. So as such, we don't study. So in that way, it's a difficult question. It's very difficult to attempt this question. And ऊपर से the problem is this is a 15-marker question. If you see this, the 15-marker question, and it'll be very difficult for us to like write 3 pages on this whole thing. And so because of this reason, I don't think that this question is easy. It's a difficult question, number one. Number two, this question is not a very scoring question either, because you require very specific data and very specific examples and specific names of places nearby Antarctic or the Arctic. You need very specific data to substantiate your points here, which a normal and average UPSC aspirant would not have. So in that way, your scope for innovation, your scope for adding specific points in this question is very limited. So in that way, I don't think that this is scoring either. So my opinion is to finish this question as early as possible and go forward. Now, the next thing is about whether this question is important or not. Is it a must-prepare question or it may not be repeated? I don't think that a similar question would be asked, which talks about different weather patterns and human activities. But at the same time, since Arctic is getting important, and since we've already seen one question from the Arctic, I think we saw it previously about already one question was there from the Arctic. What are the different impacts of the melting of the Arctic ice? Something like that, right? So that question and this question, if we read them together, it means that this area, Arctic and Antarctic, is very important. Now, the cryosphere as such is very important. So, isliye, I think this is it's not a must-prepare topic, right? But at the same time, you need to know certain aspects about the Arctic and the Antarctic. Okay. Now, going to the structure of the question, how should we write this question? How should we write the answer? So here, since they're asking about the melting of the Arctic ice, that is in fact what we have told here. Arctic ice is at its lowest level. Antarctic glaciers are declining at an unprecedented manner. So if you see here, we only have information about the Arctic ice. See, we just had the AR6 in the IPCC report, AR6. And that is something that, we have very specific information about, lowest level in 150 years. About the Antarctic, we do not have a very specific information. But usme humne kya kar diya? Antarctic ice is declining at an unprecedented manner. So this seems like a generic thing, but because it is clubbed with something specific, it is not that the examiner will say that this is a very generic point. So यहाँ पे हमें marks मिलेगा because we have said something as specific as the IPCC report, AR6 and 150 years में सबसे lowest level for the Arctic. So in spite of not giving that sort of data for the Antarctic, we'll still get marks here. So this is, I think, the best way to introduce, because the question is about the melting of the Arctic and the Antarctic ice. The introduction should also have some data about Arctic and the Antarctic ice. Okay. Now, another way to introduce is maybe, some people will think that, you can talk about the location of the Arctic and the Antarctic, or you can talk about the importance of the Arctic and the Antarctic. But I don't think, you see, Arctic and the Antarctic, the location needs to be said. Or that, the importance of Arctic and Antarctic should be said in the introduction. It's better to use, this sort of an introduction which talks about the melting of the Arctic ice. Okay. Now, ideally, the approach that one should follow for this is like this. How is Arctic ice melting and Antarctic ice melting differently impacting weather and human activities, right? So I would first say weather. How Arctic and Antarctic is differently impacting weather. Then I would have some criteria. So in weather mein kya hoga? weather may, there might be rainfall, there might be or rainfall or precipitation, there might be winds, there might be humidity, right? And how the Arctic ice melt is impacting rainfall, how the Antarctic ice is impacting rainfall. So this is like the ideal way in which you need to write. However, as we've already said, that since we do not have this much information, we cannot write it like this. ठीक है? So पहले हमने weather बता दिया, फिर how differently it is affecting Arctic ice is affecting weather and differently Antarctic ice is affecting weather, है ना? With each parameter कि rainfall को कैसे affect कर रहा है. Similarly, the next part should be human activities. So how is Antarctic ice and Arctic ice differently affecting? So here what will we have? Here human activities may we can have how Antarctic ice melt is differently affecting fishing, and how Arctic ice is differently affecting fishing. How this is affecting transportation, right? This is affecting geopolitical activities and things like that. How this is affecting science and research. So this is the sort of ideal way in which this answer should be approached. However, since, like we said earlier, we do not have enough content on this, the best way to approach is not the ideal way, but the practical way to approach is like this. पहले हमने impact of melting of weather patterns बता दिए, broad subheading. Then first point about the Arctic ice, and we told whatever we know about the Arctic ice. And there, since we had the opportunity to draw a diagram, we draw the polar vortex ka diagram. Second, the B part is about the Antarctic glacier melting. So उसमें भी हमने थोड़ा बहुत whatever specificities we could add there about the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. So whatever specificity we could add there, we added that. And then we, generally, we did not differentiate here. If you see this, we did not differentiate based on Arctic and Antarctic. We just said impact of melting on human activities. We did not differentiate between Arctic and Antarctic. So this sort of an approach is not the best, not the ideal approach. However, since we do not have content in this is the way in which we should write generic points